So you have some work gaps in your resume and you don't know how to go and essentially bridge those gaps, and you don't want to either look job hoppy, or you basically don't know how to go ahead and explain why you haven't been working for various periods of time on your resume. I'm going to give you a tip on this video as to something that you may be able to do, but mind you, the best thing would be for you to contact me on LinkedIn with your resume so I can have a look. This is not, full disclaimer, this is not going to work all of the time, but it can work in most scenarios if applied correctly. So even though I'm going to give you this tip, it has to be very tactfully and strategically placed into your resume, and more importantly, on the back end, you need to have an explanation as to why you were not working, what you were doing during this time. So to go ahead and clarify what is a work gap could be a situation where you haven't been working since the last position that you were laid off at. The tech layoffs basically started around April 2022 and May 2022. So maybe you haven't been working from Q2 and Q3 of 2022, which is 2 years ago, and you want to go ahead and fill in that gap because there might be anywhere between 12 to 24 months of gap that is missing, and you don't know how to explain that. Secondly, there could be a work gap between, you could be at a job right now, you're gainfully employed, but in your previous position, there might have been, so your most current position here, and then before that you had another position, and then there's a gap. And usually if there's like a 3-month gap, there's really nothing too much to worry about. But let's just say you might not have been working for a year, and you don't know how to go ahead and explain that. So this is just a singular gap that happened 1 or 2 positions ago. That's an easier thing to go ahead and explain. Or the third scenario is there is a pattern of work gaps that exist throughout your entire resume, and I'm going to go ahead and give you some tips about that. But at the very top level, if you have a gap on your resume from your most recent position and you haven't been working for maybe 12 or 24 months, something that you could possibly say as an explainer as to what you were doing given this time is that you worked at a stealth startup and you signed an NDA, so there's nothing for you to disclose. And also, you weren't being compensated because you were being paid equity. This is something that I saw work time and time again during my time as a recruiter, to go ahead and just bypass the recruiter so they can start talking to people. Now, I'm not encouraging anybody to straight up lie, but a lot of times when product managers are laid off or they decide to not work for a while, they are doing various consulting projects. And yeah, essentially speaking, that was a startup, it's stealth. It just so happens that the startup that I was working at was my own. It was my own consultancy. In every definition of the word, that qualifies as a startup. This isn't to go ahead and negate like you were actually getting paid. You're just trying to bypass the recruiter, because that is the biggest gatekeeper to stopping you from actually speaking to people that you're gonna be working with. Because your chances of getting the job dramatically and exponentially skyrocket if you actually have a chance to speak with people that you're gonna be working with. If you're stuck at the recruiter stage, you have no shot, because even after you get hired, you're never gonna see the recruiter again, with the exception of like the occasional happy hour if you're like in person. You don't have anything to do with the recruiter. The recruiter doesn't really care about you. The people that do are the people that you're gonna work with. So this is just, we're trying to go ahead and remove the friction of the recruiter saying, this person hasn't been working for a while, so therefore they must not be very much in demand. That means they're not very good at their job. That means we shouldn't waste our time talking to them. 2, okay, stealth startup, interesting. All right, so maybe I'm gonna go ahead and give this person a call, because stealth startups, sometimes they're really cool places to work at, but there is some mystery and there is some like intrigue to go ahead and elicit that call. And your chances of getting a call with an actual hiring manager goes up if you can actually get a call with the recruiter in the first place. So that's strategy 1. Strategy number 2, which I also recommend, send me your resume on LinkedIn, let me have a lookie, is that you may have had a gap. Depending on how wide that gap is, there's various ways to go ahead and actually explain that. If it's a 3-month gap, it's obviously easier than a 6-month gap or a 1-year gap or a 2-year gap. But if you're gainfully employed right now, chances are that's not that big of a deal, but I would also have to know what were the circumstances. So if you do send me your resume, it would dramatically save me a lot of time because I'm getting blown up right now on my LinkedIn. If you reach out, send me your resume, but also list out on the LinkedIn message, hey Rich, I watched your YouTube video about navigating work gaps on my resume, and the gap that I had is my most recent position, or the gap that I had was from 2 years ago. If you tell me where your gap is and how long that gap was, and also give me an explanation as to why there is a gap, it could also provide me with better insight to go ahead and give you some information as to how to fill up that hole. Now, the third most third most difficult scenario for me or any recruiter or any career coach to go out there and explain is if you've had multiple career gaps. So if we see a pattern of like 7 to 8 month gigs, that's harder. And that one I would really have to know like what was going on there. If you've had 1 or 2 managers that were really bad, that's one thing. But if you got 4 positions where you haven't held down a job for more than a year, we got a serious pattern here of just not being able to prove success, especially in a market where driving results is so important right now. So again, reach out to me with your resume. There's various strategies to go ahead and play it, but I'm gonna go ahead and end with this. Having work gaps on your resume has not stopped people from getting interviews, but it does stop people from getting the job if you don't have an explanation for it. So now we're transitioning into more of like from getting the interview to actually getting the job, right? If you don't address in the tell me about yourself answer your reason for having a gap, that's actually where a lot of the problems happen. So another reason for you to go ahead and contact me is like, I can go ahead and give you some tips, but if you ultimately want to go ahead and lock down the job, because I'm pretty sure you don't enjoy interviewing, is we need to create an explanation for that. And it starts with the resume, and it also starts with the tell me about yourself answer. And here's the reason why, and I'll give you an example. If you wait for the recruiter or a hiring manager to go ahead and ask you, so between 2016 and 2017 year end, actually almost January 2018, I mean, if they have to now play detective, you're already, I think you can empathize with this, you're already coming in at a disadvantage because now they got to go ahead and dig. And once they're got the shovel out, who knows what they're going to go ahead and find. But if you actually say, oh yeah, and during the tell me about yourself answer, which is actually one of my most highly ranked YouTube videos of all, because it's the first question that's going to get thrown at you, you want to go ahead and cover it. So as you can see from my background, I was working here where I did X, Y, and Z, and in my previous position I was doing this, and also during that time I had a work gap because I was doing that. And that kind of brings me into why I'm applying to this job today. If you're addressing it early and often, then it becomes more of a non-issue, and also the tonality and the confidence and the assertiveness that you're addressing that answer is better versus like, okay, so what happened over there? If I got to go ahead and ask for it as a recruiter, then I'm already prying, and you don't, it kind of comes off like you're hoping I didn't see something. I mean, it's right there. This is what these people do for a living. So instead of actually trying to sweep it underneath the rug, get ahead of it and go ahead and address it. The other thing here is if it's because you had a recent layoff and you haven't been working in 6 to 7 months, go ahead and also talk to them about what was the situation there and why are you applying to this role specifically. So having work gaps, whether it's the most recent position that you're working at right now or whether it's a previous position somewhere on your resume, that doesn't stop you from getting interviews. If you're not getting interviews, largely even if you had your resume written to present, I'd argue that a lot of these resumes wouldn't be getting a lot of interviews either, just because it might not be optimized for the applicant tracking system or the recruiter. But even if you break through the interview, most important thing, and I know a lot of people are very nervous about the work gap situation. If I can just talk to these people, if you don't cover it early and often in the very beginning, that's also not going to help you get the job, and that's just going to cause you to keep watching these YouTube videos. Like, I want you to go ahead and get the job. So with that said, my name is Rich, one of the co-founders here at Product Gym. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am here to help you. I'm here to help you in every way possible because I want you to get off at this job hunt. We're leaving no product manager behind. Contact me, let's talk shop, let's go ahead and find you your next product manager job. Till then, happy hunting. Don't forget to subscribe. We have more videos coming out.